we have a couple of what's called undesigned coincidences. I've taught on these a couple times on a Sunday night or a Wednesday night. An undesigned coincidence in Scripture is where you find details in what some people call flyover country. In the Bible, you know those details that you just kind of read right past, don't think twice about? They're the little trivial things that don't actually affect any of the meaning of the passage. They're just in there. And the thing is, scholars have discovered that whenever you take these almost seemingly insignificant details, you'll take a detail over here from this book and a detail over here from this book, and you get a full picture. Sometimes you'll be reading through the Bible and you'll think, that's weird, I wonder what's going on there. But you don't really think about it because it's an insignificant detail and you just move right along. But what you may not realize is that a different author in a different book accounting the same thing answers that question you had. And scholars look at this, and this is what gives what they call the ring of truth. Because if they were just making these up, would they have these weird, trivial little details that kind of go together, interlocking, to give you the full story? And we actually have a couple of those in here. We'll see how that works. In Matthew and Mark, they both mention that whenever Jesus calls him and says, okay, we'll take care of this, we'll feed the crowd, have them sit down on the green grass. Jesus instructs his disciples to have the multitude sit down on the green grass. Have y'all ever seen the Holy Land? Y'all seen pictures? Have you been there? Not a lot in the way of green grass going on in Israel, right? Well, okay, so where's all this green grass? How do we know that there's green grass? Well, what's interesting is John, in his recording, actually mentions that this event takes place around the time of Passover. When is Passover? Spring. Passover coincides with Easter, right around that time, where maybe you have a few weeks, maybe a month or so out of the year where you're going to have lots of green grass in Israel. Well, now that's interesting. Over here, they're saying sit on the green grass. They don't tell you why there's green grass. That's kind of weird. Over here, he mentions that it's springtime. You see where it kind of goes together. These weren't main points of the passage. They're things they could have just not mentioned at all, and we wouldn't have missed it. Okay, so it's green grass. Big deal. But whenever you take them together, it shows. These aren't people who are trying to invent stories. They're telling you what actually happened, and it just so happens they have their details that line up. But the second one's even better in John 6:5. So they have the crowd. They know they need food. So Jesus turns to Philip, and he says to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread that these may eat?" Well, now that's interesting. Who's Philip? But Philip is actually a fairly obscure one of the 12. I mean, none of the 12 are, nobodies, but, Peter, James, John, right? These guys that get mentioned over and over again. Matthew, right? These are names we're more familiar with. I mean, if he's going to turn to someone and say, hey, where do we need to buy them food? Wouldn't he turn to, Peter or John? Right? Well, one of the inner circle, but Philip. Why is he asking Philip? Well, here's what's interesting. In John chapter 1, verse 44, it actually mentions, we get a little insight about Philip. It says, now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Okay. So he's from Bethsaida. What's that got to do with anything? But you jump over to Luke's gospel and his telling of the feeding in chapter 9, verse 10, it says that, then Jesus took them and went aside privately to a deserted place belonging to the city called Bethsaida. So whenever he says, hey guys, I want to hear all about your events and everything that happened, let's go over here to this remote place and have some privacy. The remote place they go to is near the town of Bethsaida. And now the multitude comes and finds him, and he has this multitude and needs to feed them, and so he goes, hey, Philip, you're from here. That's edited in. He didn't actually say you're from here, but now we kind of see why is he tagging Philip? Hey, Philip, where do we go get him food? Right, this is Philip's hometown. This is his region. This is where he's from. See, but you get a piece from over here, and a piece from over here, and a piece from over here, and it weaves the picture all together. And all of these are insignificant details, details that do not alter the meaning, the message of the text one bit. It's not the kind of thing that a fraud or a forgery is going to include, especially in such a way that they fit together and show the truth.